any situation where I'm considered to be older, as my parishioners keep reminding me that I am not, in fact, up for that category. Well, Jessica, this would be over my head if I hadn't taken a class with a particular professor in seminary that had a real interest in the connection between natural philosophy, as classically understood, involving the physical world and what we can know from it by mere reason, and with some of the modern questions of what we call like the hard sciences these days, but would generally be what was classically called the physics, but using more advanced methods of observation. And so we actually did a debate on whether the multiverse can exist using classical principles of Aristotelian philosophy. So I have some idea of how scientists might propose the idea of a multiverse, and if my understanding is limited, I apologize. Your children must be really into the sciences if they're thinking about this. So my understanding of how a multiverse tends to be posited in one of the primary theories, it's not that another universe has been observed in any sense. It's entirely conjectural based on principles. By definition, a universe is the unity of all that can be observed. What I believe physicists tend to say is that because there's evidence that the universe is expanding infinitely out into, I guess, what is a vacuum currently, that is a question, is that possible? And given that the universe also seems to be infinite in size, apparently, they're saying, and there could be spaces between what we would call different universes, meaning, say, if I have my right hand and my left hand that are separated by some space and each represent a universe, and they're each infinitely expanding at infinite speeds or at rapid speeds apart from each other, also what is expanding, these scientists tend to say, is that space in between my hands, the empty space, the vacuum, or whatever that means. And so therefore you'd have these two separate quote unquote universes that would never touch. So you could never observe one from the other because light particles or photons, I don't know if I'm describing this entirely properly, but they would never reach each other. So in that case, if we also had an infinitely sized quote unquote, again, universe, using a different conception of universe, meaning like all that exists, which is really what universe is supposed to mean, then we could have an infinite number of these, let's call them lowercase u universes that are ever expanding but never touching. And so if you had this infinite number of quote unquote lowercase u universes, then in some iteration of the quote unquote lowercase u universe, there would be another say iteration of our world in terms of the arrangement of particles. That would mean there's another quote unquote father born, quote unquote, another Rudy Carlos. So this is how a mere materialist view of the world would say that there's another version of you out there. Now, this could fail in all number of scientific possibilities. It's still conjecture. It's a mathematical question. It's a philosophical question. But where this does fail, where it relates to a non-materialist view of the world, which is just true, meaning we are not mere material. We have souls. So no, there is no other you. You are not a mere collection of particles that happen to be arranged in some fashion so that you look the same and maybe have similar passions and affections and otherwise. You have an individual soul that is created by God. So no, God is not just he's not multiplying two souls, and this also brings, the question of free will and the influence of grace. So no, there is no other Adam and Eve in the world that did not eat the apple. It's not even necessarily true that there is another version of quote unquote you that's a similar version of an arrangement of particles out there. But when we know it's definitely not possible for there to be another exact version of another person out there, we'd actually be radically different because you are so individual and important to the Lord our God, who created the souls of your children, and you, Jessica, and myself and Rudy, all at the moment of our conceptions. So that's how we kind of can answer it from a perspective that physics can't really get into.
I got to say, Father, I'm impressed. That is a really impressive answer to kind of, it's a scientism question because, I think a lot of the things that are, they're like pop questions in science, like multiverse theory or string theory, all these different theories that are around. And it's a way for us to just kind of be distracted from the reality that we are so unique and special, and God made us, and we're living in the world that He made for us. Like, it's amazing. So thank you for that question, Jessica. Hopefully that was pretty good for your children. I'm asking my friends. I can't remember this author, but he wrote an amazing book, and it popped into mind because he talked about how it's impossible to have infinity. But if I get it, if my friends come through and they text it to me, I will mention it again for you, Jessica. And I want to give a very big thank you to Mary from Missouri City, a one-time $1,000 donation. And she asks for prayers for peace and the souls in purgatory. Thank you, Mary, for that so generous donation. That's going to be doubled in this hour. So $2,000 on the board. And can we ask for your pledge? Can we include your pledge to this hour? Can we double it for the glory of God? That phone number, if you want to make a pledge and support the Catholic radio station in your neck of the woods or at large here on all of our different platforms, please call in your pledge, 1-877-711-8500. And let's see here. We're going to take an emailed question from Tim in Germany. Tim asks, is there any reason why marrying or not marrying someone can be a sin if both are licitly available for marriage? It sounds kind of like a discernment question to me, but what say you, Father?
I think you're right, Rudy. If two people are both available to marry, I mean, they're free to marry, should they marry? Is there a sin in marrying or not marrying? I guess there's an infinite number of possibilities, or a near infinite number at least. But what are some maybe common ones? If you don't think that you can fulfill the obligations of marriage, even though you are objectively available to, then no, you should not marry someone. You shouldn't marry someone under the illusion that since love is a choice, which it is, that I can just choose to make marriage vows to somebody if I don't prudently find it that possible for myself to fulfill those obligations of marriage. And that is a discernment question, Rudy, because I think these days with young people, unfortunately, being so anxious and often fearful, maybe spending a lot of their social life, quote unquote, social life on the internet and social media and away from real interactions, we're seeing a fear of commitment. And so priests especially have to work with you. And Tim, I'd encourage, if you're in this situation, to really work with a local priest, hopefully in marriage in Germany that understands marriage, to encourage you to go forth boldly, but to also know yourself. And since I hear the music, if we have more to say on this, we'll have to pick up on the other side.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much for that question, Tim. We may get to it on the other side of this break and answer it and flesh it out a little bit more, but you're listening to Ask a Priest Live here on the Station of the Cross Catholic Media Network, and we have a fund drive going today and tomorrow. We have funds to raise to keep Catholic radio on the airwaves in cities all over the United States. Please call in your pledge, 1-877-711-8500. There's going to be more questions on the other side of the break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
I just want to thank the station for helping me, and thank God that we have this now so that people know that they're not alone out in this world, that Jesus is there through his people.
When Catholic radio came to Rochester, it really made a big difference for me, and because it was my faith and my tradition and being able to go closer in my faith to God via that vehicle made a big difference for me. It made me realize the differences there were between the Protestant tradition and my own Catholic tradition, and it's good to come home in that sense as well.
I was a faithful, devout Catholic all my life, but until I began listening to your channel, I never knew how little I knew about my own faith. And now it's on continuously in my house, day and night. You can't imagine how much I received from that channel. I mean, things that I never realized I didn't know. And I'm happy that I now know them, or at least understand a little more of it. And I've recommended it to everyone I know. And there are some people in my building here who really have decided to listen.
Not only hearing about Jesus Christ, but learning how we can grow closer to Christ.
Lo and behold, there was a bumper sticker in front of me in traffic at a red light, and I turned on that station and I was hooked to 1060. I couldn't believe it. I ended up in the Catholic Church, reconciliation with conversion, and it has been glorious ever since. The Holy Spirit has just filled me with joy, and I can't say enough about my church and the beautiful life that I am going to have with the Catholic Church.
I want to say thank you for the bumper stickers. I don't drive to work, but I put them on my bag. I've got a lot of comments from people, and a lot of people tell me they listen to the station. It's a wonderful station. I'm glad you brought it to Boston.
I'm a hospice nurse here in Massachusetts, and I just wanted to share that I really enjoy your radio station. I spend a lot of time in the car. It allows me to receive spiritual communion and also allows me to pray for my patients on my way to their homes. And sometimes it even gives me ideas of things that I can share about my faith.
You're listening to Ask a Priest Live from the Station of the Cross Catholic Media Network and the iCatholic Radio mobile app. Give us a call at 1-877-511-5483 or send us an email at priests@thestationofthecross.com.
Can I just borrow a one-liner from our good friend Joe McLean, who hosts the morning show, A Catholic Take here on the Station of the Cross, and just say, praise be to Jesus Christ, because we have a few more people to thank, including Thomas from Niagara-on-the-Lake. Monthly donation of $192. Thank you, Thomas, for that generous donation. That's going to be doubled this hour. As well as Yvonne from East Amherst, a one-time donation of $30, doubled as well. And Anonymous in Port Jervis, a $100 one-time donation. Thank you so much. If you want to be included with everybody else who's making pledges to keep Catholic Radio on the air, please do give us a call. 1-877-711-8500 is the number to call. And over the break, I got a text from Jordan Pacheco. I said, hey, Jordan, do you remember that guy who was a Catholic author who worked in the film industry, who wrote a book about, infinity and all that stuff? He says, no, I can't remember. So he let me down, but I started thinking about it. And the author, who is a fellow Catholic, his name is Leo Severino, wrote a book called Going Deeper. So, Jessica, if you're still listening, that's a great book. And anyone who really wants to think about or talk about scientism, maybe you need a book about apologetics against atheism. It's a great book. Leo Severino put on lots of talks for us at our Fraternity St. Peter Parish in Los Angeles. But thank you for those donations. Again, that number is 1-877-711-8500. Now, Father, any closing thoughts about Tim from Germany, who's asking about whether it be a sin to marry or not marry somebody?
Well, yeah, for anybody who just popped on, we're talking about two people who are objectively available to marry. Would it be any sinful reason for them to marry or not marry? And we just have to look at what are the essential obligations of marriage, as well as what's my likelihood of being able to fulfill those promises. So the essential obligations of marriage are unity, meaning remaining the two of you together exclusively in a relationship, which does not have others entering into it in a marital way. Indissolubility, so we're talking about for life, and openness to children. So two people being available for marriage includes that they say they're ready for these things, but what is their likelihood of being able to fulfill those things, even if they be of good will? I mean, you could have somebody with serious addiction issues that really needs to maybe count the cost and say, I may try as hard as I can, but if I have sexual addiction to alcohol or drugs, if I have severe trauma in my past that affects my life, if I have severe issues with anger that can spill over into abuse, or I have a manipulative personality or just general personality issues, something that might run in my family that I need psychological attention for, this would be something to really address while you're single. Use your time that you have while you're single to actually address these things and seek professional and spiritual, helps to make yourself available for marriage, to be able to commit to those essential responsibilities of marriage when the time comes. And we also should make sure that someone is a good fit for us, not just that we're two Catholics who are available to marry. Although I think we do know that maybe our grandparents met and they barely knew each other, and they built a marriage that's lasted for 60 years, whereas today all these couples will do a whole lot more, quote unquote, preparation or time together for that and then divorce. But that doesn't mean we should be should I say careless about the courtship process. I should actually love my prospective spouse and seem to be a good fit. That doesn't change the fact that you're always going to have to work more on the marriage than you find to just be naturally. Then you, I don't know, how do I say this? Meaning, you're always going to be working on the marriage. It's not just going to be how do you naturally go together. That's that lie of the soulmate and the kind of Disney story that it all just goes happily ever after. That's never true. So we do need, as you said, Rudy, right off the bat, this is a discernment process. But for those that are considering this question, I know it's always a deep question of how to discern. So I'd say go to a priest you trust and go to some people who've been married for a long time and people who know you well and ask for some serious advice. And if I could, just on the prior question, Rudy, thank you for that recommendation. I might look into this Leo Severino. I'd also throw out there for those that are more philosophically minded, Dr. Ed Fazer, who teaches at a community college out in California, but is a Catholic and is an expert in Aristotelian philosophy. It would probably be a little headier to get into, but anybody who's listening who has a real bent for how natural philosophy can debunk some of these scientific theories, then I'd look to him. He's definitely got interviews online on Catholic Answers or on, he did Pints with Aquinas, the YouTube channel, some time ago, and we might be able to listen to him explain some of these things better. I'm sure he gets into the multiverse question in one of those. It's Ed Fazer, F-E-S-E-R. Fazer.
Yes. Very well, very popular Catholic apologist, Ed Fazer. So thank you for that. And, Father, I was thinking, the first couple of years of marriage are really the toughest because a lot of people don't understand this and they go into it, like you said, with this Disney understanding, like this is, it's just, it's going to be a movie. It's going to be, everything's going to be fine. But you realize very quickly, and I'm sure you've come to understand this as a pastor in your pastoral guidance, that getting married involves a lot of dying to each other, like even your ideas. It's not just to your spouse, but also some of the ideas you bring into the marriage. And I definitely went through that.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody preparing for marriage out there might consider doing the Focus exam, FOCCUS, or it's got two letters in a row, and it's Focus spelled incorrectly, where one of the letters is doubled because it's an acronym. But a lot of it, what it does, it's an inventory. You answer questions about yourself and your expectations for marriage and your expectations for a spouse, life together, parenthood, career, things like that. So you can match things up. There's really so much that it puts to plain words that you might not otherwise think about. Really, when you answer 100 questions about your expectations, you realize you had expectations implicitly that you were assuming based on your own experience of marriage, growing up with your parents' marriage or your own ideas that you didn't even realize that you had, for division of responsibilities, for what the future would look like, conflict management, and the like, even things that don't come up in even the best of courtship processes. So I think it's helpful for those who are seriously dating to do that. In fact, I'm traveling with family friends and some time off next week. That couple, when they met, the wife had been through so many longer relationships that didn't pan out, that right when she met her would-be spouse, I think within the first month or so of dating, she actually did that Focus exam with him because she just wanted to get it right out of the way at the beginning. Should we even consider this in the future? And anyways, that marriage is now probably in it's got to be around 8 years now and 3 children. So blessed be God.
Wow, thanks be to God.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Is that the one where you take it separately from your spouse or your prospective spouse, and then you get it tallied together, and then the ones that you defer on, is that the one where you kind of come together and talk about those specific questions?
Yes, yeah, it is Focus, FOCCUS. You generally can't do it unless you're doing it with a trained facilitator. I'm working on becoming a trained facilitator in this, so I can give it to my couples preparing for marriage. But I believe that if you looked around in your diocese, you could find some priest or qualified layperson that's registered in how to do this. And it's not just for those preparing for marriage. There's a refocused one that's called marriage enrichment. So you can take the marriage enrichment exam just for an update, whether or not your relationship is going well or whether you're in real trouble. I think there's something in there for everyone.
I did that one. It's an excellent resource. Thank you for bringing that one up, Father. Father Paul Bourne joins us today to answer all of your questions here on Ask a Priest Live. And again, this is the show that answers all of your questions. It's a boon of just a great apologetics. It's a great resource for everybody who is asking questions or coming into the faith. So please do consider making a pledge to keep Catholic Radio and this program specifically, and all of the programs that you love from the Station of the Cross Catholic Media Network, on air. You could do that by going to thestationofthecross.com. You can donate safe and secure there. You can also donate on the iCatholic mobile radio app, or call in your pledge or your questions at 1-877-711-8500. We're doing a match for match hour this hour, so any gift, any size that you can give to the station is going to be doubled for the glory of God. 1-877-711-8500. We're going to keep going here. YouTube question from MP. Is it proper to have a funeral mass for a baptized Catholic that has walked away from the church? Father, what does the church say about this?
Well, this is in canon law. So for those who want to look, canons, I just looked it up, 111 or 1176 through 1185 deal with ecclesiastical funerals. So the first canon says that deceased members of the Christian faithful must be given ecclesiastical funerals according to the norm of the law. So the first principle is that if you are in communion with the church, including if you are even a catechumen, that's another canon. That's canon 1183. So if you're preparing for baptism, you're considered to be a part of the Christian faithful when it comes to funerals. Then you are to be given a funeral if requested. But what's the norm of the law? So who should one actually be denied to? So canon 1184 says that unless the deceased gave some signs of repentance before death, the following must be deprived of ecclesiastical funerals: notorious apostates, heretics, or schismatics. That's number one. Number two is those who chose cremation of their bodies for reasons contrary to the Catholic faith. That's two. Three, other manifest sinners who cannot be granted ecclesiastical funerals without public scandal of the faithful. And then that's all under point one under 1184. Point two is if any doubt occurs, the local ordinaries to be consulted. So you ask the local bishop if there's any doubt. And canon 1185 is the last one, saying any funeral mass must also be denied a person who is excluded from ecclesiastical funerals. I'd have to look into that, the meaning of that is actually. Maybe that's a mass without a body must even be denied if they were to be denied one under the prior canons involving the body being present. So I guess the question asker is saying someone who's walked away from the church. That could mean different things. Somebody who just doesn't attend mass anymore because of the abuse scandal or the difficulty they had at their parish once, or not hearing a difficulty with the gospel once that they weren't ready to bear. When canon law talks about notorious apostates, heretics, and schismatics, I hear the music. Well, I guess that's a good cliffhanger, right, Rudy?
Yeah, definitely. We'll put a pin right there. Stay tuned. You're going to find out what the parameters are to have a Catholic funeral. There's a couple things that are required here, so we'll get to that right after that very short break that we're going to go into right now. But please do call in your pledges if you want to help keep Catholic Radio on in your neck of the woods, all over the place here. and also all over the world, all over the platforms that we're on here at the Station of the Cross Catholic Media Network. Please do call in your pledge, 1-877-711-8500. But don't go away. We have more questions on the other side, and hopefully yours as well. We'll see. Don't go anywhere.
Catholic radio shows that there's other people out there like me that still search and want to know more about their faith. Prayer from Catholic radio has helped me tremendously with the Divine Mercy in the afternoon. I never heard of the Divine Mercy growing up. Just learning that on the radio has changed my faith tremendously. I love the shows where people call in that aren't Catholic and question why we do things as Catholics as if we're some strange foreign people, but it's great to hear those apologetics on the radio because it builds your strength in your own faith to want to go out and live it and not be afraid to talk about your faith, not be afraid to tell people you're going to pray for them. I literally have called in to pray for family or friends that have been ill. It's wonderful. And it's just an addition to your faith that people don't even know exists out there. And you're driving around every day. You're running your kids as a taxi driver every day. It's something to put on instead of the crazy music that fills your brain with nothing half the time. So Catholic radio has just made my day even more spiritual because it's a place that I can turn on my faith just during the day when normally may not have thought about Christ. It makes you feel more confident about who you are and what you believe in. A lot of times I feel like, oh man, I wish I knew as much as some of the people I'm listening to on Catholic radio. That's the way to learn, is to just keep listening.
Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Do you ever feel that you've lost your way? Do you ever feel that you don't know the truth? Do you ever feel that your life has no direction? Well, don't despair. There's good news. Catholic radio is always here for you. Simply listen and learn. And please give generously during our fund drive. We thank you, and God bless you.
For the weekly show lineup or resources from past episodes, check out our show page at thestationofthecross.com or watch our live video feeds on Facebook, YouTube, or Rumble to interact with the show team and submit your questions in real time. Just search for Ask a Priest Live.
Blessed be the holy name of Jesus. Welcome back to the show. And today we have Father Paul Bourne answering all of your questions today. And right before the break, we left you on a cliffhanger about the prerequisites for a funeral mass, particularly for someone who's walked away from the faith. So, Father, please continue.
Right. So we left off at Canon 1184. Unless they gave some signs of repentance before death, the following must be deprived of ecclesiastical funerals: notorious apostates, heretics, and schismatics, semicolon. So there's two more categories after this. But we're talking about apostates, meaning someone who has left Christianity. They have denied that Jesus Christ is the unique Savior of the world, that he is the incarnate God, the incarnate Word, and that he came to save us. So that would be someone who leaves Christianity for, say, Islam or a Far Eastern kind of religion, or someone who's formally denied the truth of Jesus Christ. Formally, meaning it's not a teenager who just says they don't believe in God anymore. We're talking notorious apostate, somebody who does this publicly. This would often mean they go to a church. They make a public renunciation of Jesus Christ and accept some new belief in God outside of Christianity. Of course, Mormonism, this would be, what do you call, Kingdom Hall, Jehovah's Witnesses, all kinds of things like that. Then you have the heretic. So a heretic is a post-baptismal denial of the Christian faith. So, I mean, the Muslim is not actually a heretic. The Muslim's not a Christian. So Muslim's wrong about many things, not a Christian, so can't be a heretic. So notorious heretics here. Again, we're not talking about somebody who goes to Mass on Sunday who holds false beliefs. We're talking notoriously promoting post-baptismal denials of essential elements of the Christian faith. So they are denying the existence of hell in some public manner, writing books about it, and or they've publicly left the Catholic Church, and to do so in some notorious manner where they absolutely rail against the existence of the papacy or against in the Blessed Virgin Mary's role, whatever it may be, in a notorious manner. And then schismatics, those who break communion with the Catholic Church in some notorious public way. So again, the word notorious here is up for interpretation. So again, if we look down to one of the next points, it says if there's any doubt that occurs in regards to all these categories, the local bishops to be consulted. So we're talking about a pretty high standard here, actually. If we look at the next category of persons after the semicolon of notorious apostates, heretics, and schismatics, we get to those who choose cremation of their bodies for reasons contrary to the Christian faith. If you know why, Rudy, my widow's peak is developing here on the sides of my head, is because I pulled out hair from these points. Whenever you mention cremation and you give the perfect answer, and then someone says, "So, Father, I can't get cremated," it drives me nuts. So I'm going to say this once, and I don't want any follow-up questions, denying the things that I've just said. You cannot choose cremation for reasons contrary to the Christian faith. So what's contrary to the Christian faith is that you're denying resurrection of the body or the holiness of the body, the dignity of the body. In the ancient world, cremation and scattering of ashes was meant to indicate the futileness of the world, or the fact that the body's just mere material that goes in some circle of life. So if you think that you're just going to scatter your ashes in the ocean or into the earth because you're just going to become a tree now, as if you persist in some reincarnation, this is not allowed. And no, you cannot scatter your ashes unless you die at sea. You can't be placed in the ocean. It's burial at sea. And these are the reasons contrary to the Christian faith. So don't come and ask me, so I can't get cremated. That's not what I said. And I want to keep the rest of my hair. So, all right, let's not get into that. For reasons contrary to the Christian faith. If you're going to ask any follow-up about that to any priest, you better ask with that thing in there. Say, what are reasons contrary to the Christian faith? Don't just ask, I heard a priest say you can't get cremated, because that's not what I said, and that would be a lie. Lying's a sin. So next point after the semicolon. Other manifest sinners who cannot be, okay, if you're doing something publicly in grave scandal and sin and die in that state, then you shouldn't be granted ecclesiastical funeral. A bishop once said in private to me, he was a bishop in a remote area, the world will just put it at that, and there was a U.S. port there of Navy ships would come in, and when the Navy ships would come in, a certain business would send out the ladies who worked there to the port and sort of advertise their services to the sailors who would land. And then the woman who ran this house of ill repute actually ended up dying at a fairly young age, and this house was right next to the cathedral in this small town. So actually, the bishop was traveling away from the cathedral at that, but he called the cathedral and said, if that place calls or her family calls and asks for a funeral, do not book it at the cathedral. Do not do that. What I will do is we'll have a private prayer ceremony if they call at a funeral home, and 1 week after that fact, I will go to the mother's home, the mother of the deceased, and I will offer mass in the home, because the mother was a practicing Catholic and obviously did not agree with her daughter's lifestyle. And again, the woman who died, it was the woman who ran the house, not just one of the workers. So he was actually explaining this in relation to that funeral that happened at St. Patrick's Cathedral sometime last year. If you remember, that was in the news, where a prominent trans activist. Now, the way funerals get booked in churches, it tends to be that a funeral home calls, and 3 days later to a week, the people just show up, and you had no prior knowledge of who they were necessarily, unfortunately, because of all the non-practicing Catholics who otherwise have a right to a Catholic funeral. So this bishop was explaining this to myself and some other priests, just reflecting upon that incident earlier in his episcopacy, about how the event at the funeral home did turn into a bit of an activist show of a lot of other workers from that industry kind of coming and making a kind of show of things. And he was reflecting on the fact that he was so glad that he hadn't allowed the funeral in the cathedral, because it would have brought all of that nonsense, to the great scandal of many of the faithful and the offense against the holy mysteries of God, to the cathedral. And he was thinking about that as to what happened at St. Patrick's. And if we remember what happened at St. Patrick's Cathedral about a year ago, is that once it became clear that a bunch of trans activists were in the cathedral making noise and causing disruption, the rector of the cathedral came out and told the priest who was celebrating the funeral not to continue with the mass after the homily, to just finish with the rite of burial as if you were doing a service and not a mass, to get the people out of there and not abuse the Eucharist. So good on them to prudently observe that kind of adjustment there when that happened. But
for sure.
So that's a long answer there for who can have a funeral. To the question asker, if you're talking about someone who sadly in your family stopped practicing the faith, and even maybe spoke, in criticism about the church when you try to get them to go back, no, they don't fall necessarily into one of these categories. They're not a notorious apostate, heretic, or schismatic, even if they were living, obviously in sin because they weren't going to mass and stuff. They are in need of God's mercy, and we can pray for them. So it is possible to have a funeral mass, but it's also possible, if it's going to be a big problem with your family receiving the Eucharist in sin and otherwise, you can also just have a mass offered for this person without their body present later, and I would recommend that either way.
Awesome. Thank you for that question. I have a few people that I want to thank here, including Immaculata over on YouTube says, big shout out to Father Paul Bourne. He served Holy Mass at my parish in Nashua. And I also want to highlight Happy Yo, who is expecting a baby. Ask for prayers, specifically from you, Father. But Happy Yo, we're going to also pray for you and your baby and your family at our chapel here in Buffalo. But let's see. We also have to thank Stephen over in Lockport, New York, a one-time donation of $100. And if you're tuning in just now and, you're a regular listener to the show, you know that this show is very edifying to souls, as well as all of our other programs here on the Station of the Cross Catholic Media Network. And we're raising funds today and tomorrow to bolster some of the funds that we need to continue to be on air. It's a little difficult to keep the lights on, to get everything going with salaries and keeping talent and all that stuff for an organization that does not receive funding from the diocese. We are 100% reliant on our listeners, and we're so very thankful for all of you who make a pledge. And if you'd like to be included among the people who have made a pledge this hour, please call 1-877-711-8500. That's our fund drive number. You can also call in your questions to that number, 1-877-711-8500. Now, this hour, we are doubling all of the funds thanks to a generous benefactor. And so your $1 is going to turn to $2 and so on and so forth. We're doubling this hour. It's a matching gift hour. So please consider any gift, any size. We'll take it for the glory of God. 1-877-711-8500 or donate safe and secure online at thestationofthecross.com or on the iCatholic mobile radio app. So we're going to keep going here. Father Paul Bourne is our priestly contributor today. Excuse me, I misspoke. He's going to be answering all of your questions today, including this one, which was a super chat from Katerina. Katerina, God reward you for that super chat. $25 on the board. She asks, would Father Paul Bourne share his vocation story? She says she's so grateful for this show and the priests and the team behind it. So thanks be to God. Father, please tell us about your vocation story.
Sure. Thank you, Katerina, for the support of the show, because we hear so many fruits from those who call in or write in to say how it's affected their faith. So I'll be happy to tell you nothing I think is too interesting about my particular story. Just very blessed by God at a young age to believe the faith. I went to a regular old parish outside of Boston, so I serve in the Archdiocese of Boston. Growing up with my mother and my sister, my father would generally only attend with us on Easter and Christmas, and I was very kind of moved by Mass and just the idea that God existed, was listening to our prayers. I had some youthful idea of providence, meaning some destiny in the future from God, good things that would come to those who are faithful. Obviously, in a qualified sense, I was very blessed to have this faith at a time where, growing up, due to just schools getting moved around in my town, kids that would go to private school, some of my friends, and I'd kind of lose them. The kids in my neighborhood ended up going to private school. So I had lots of friends when I was little, and then I kind of had a period where I lost a lot of my friends to those school redistricting and private school and things like that. And I actually had some tough years. Family started to break down a bit, and I saw signs that maybe my parents would split, and they would eventually after I was almost done with college. And this did affect a relationship with relationships in my family as well, as it always has collateral damage. And it was actually my belief in God that was very helpful during this time to understand that there was a reason to be faithful to the Lord, that I had value outside of my particular circumstances, suggesting what my value might be from the world. And everything really did change come high school. Things changed with my involvement in sports, different new friends, kind of being a bit of a nerd. It started to sort of pay off as the further you got towards the end of high school, more of my peers were actually worried about how their grades would affect the future. And so that went from a negative in middle school to a positive towards the end of high school, as I had a lot of options in front of me of what I wanted to do. I was very blessed to have a youth group really flourish at my parish when I was in high school. It brought me on a mission trip and a pilgrimage. I went to the third world for the first time and saw the happiness of people there, despite their lack of a lot of the things we had back home, as the iPhone was coming out, and we started to drive, and we're getting closer to adulthood and going to college possibly. I saw actually that it was these people who were happy, and my kind of mission team, our friends, were drama central when we were on our 2.5-week trip in Peru. I also was challenged in Peru by a priest that we were there, we were visiting his apostolate, and he really said, you could have a vocation of the priesthood, and you have to consider this. On the other side of the music, I'll finish that story, but I never from that day stopped thinking about the priesthood through college, through 4 years of work at a bank in New York City. I eventually answered the call, came back home to the Archdiocese of Boston, entered the seminary, and I never have had a doubt since then, because God's been so faithful.
Thanks be to God. I thought for a moment there, Father, you're going to say, and that priest was Pope Leo XIV, as you know him now. But we'll continue that story on the other side of the break. You're listening to Ask a Priest Live here on the Station of the Cross Catholic Media Network. We're raising funds. Can you help? 1-877-711-8500. Please help keep Catholic radio on in your neck of the woods. 1-877-711-8500. Don't go away. There's more Ask a Priest coming up next.
So refreshing to have a Catholic radio to call to travel with. Thank you so much for this radio station. It's a blessing. I thank you for having this on the station, and so we can all help one another and pray for one another. I read it in the Boston paper yesterday, and I was so thrilled because I watched the Catholic TV and the EWTN, but it's nice to have it on the radio for the immediate emergencies.
First of all, I want to thank you for your programming, and it's something that I've prayed for in the past, that the Catholic programming will come to Boston, It was right in my heart to pray for that.
I'm so excited about you guys being in Boston. You don't know. I've been waiting.
I'm so grateful to you for giving us this Catholic radio station in Boston. I've been wanting to have a Catholic radio station to listen to for years. I love the radio, and over the past years, I've really felt more and more that I wanted something I could listen to that was holy. The other stations seem to be getting worse and worse all the time, so I'm so grateful to you for providing this station.
I live in the Boston area, and I'm very, very pleased that Catholic EWTN radio has finally come to our market, which is a very large one. I have started listening to it. I especially like Teresa Tomio's show, and of course I've seen her on TV, and I also like Dr. Ray and Father Mitch and some of the other EWTN people on the air. I appreciate coming. I thank God. I have made a donation, and I have told as many people as I could that your station is in existence in Boston.
Princess Pilate asks, what is truth? I answer, listen to Catholic radio and find out. That's where I find the truth. Thank you, WLOF, the Station of the Cross, for being there to share the truth with the world.
I love listening to Catholic radio. I work out at the gym every morning, and I faithfully have my iPhone on and listen to your station. I wouldn't be without it. Thank you for all you do.
Never miss an episode by subscribing to our podcast feed on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Check out the free iCatholic Radio mobile app on your Android and Apple mobile devices. Listen on the go at your convenience, and consider leaving us a 5-star review if you're enjoying the show.
Blessed be the holy name of Jesus. Welcome back to the show. And I have a couple people to thank, including Bonnie over in Potsdam. Bonnie donated a one-time donation of $102.70. That is doubled in this hour. Thank you very much, Bonnie. And also Eldridge Yorkshire over on YouTube, $50 one-time donation as a super chat. That's going to be doubled as well. And they ask for prayers for the conversion of their father, George, and sister Sandra and brother Tony. Yorkshire, we're going to be praying for all of your intentions at our chapel in Buffalo. And thank you so much. God reward you for your generous donation, your pledge this hour. If you want to be among those who are pledging, including another one, let's see. This one comes to us from, I just lost it here. I'm going to get back to it in just a second here. Here it is. Mary from Howell, Missouri, $51.35 one-time donation. Thank you so much, Mary, out in Missouri. But if you want to be included in this, actually, sorry, I'm getting told it's Michigan, maybe, possibly Michigan. I'm not sure. But thank you anyway, Mary, for that generous donation. And if you want to be included with those who are generously helping and pledging their support to keep Catholic Radio on the air, call in 1-877-711-8500. 1-877-711-8500 is our call-in number. You can also donate safe and secure at thestationofthecross.com or on the iCatholic mobile radio app. Right before the break, we were talking about your vocation story, Father Born, and it's always so amazing to hear how God calls people, despite whatever happens, right? Because we don't live in a perfect world, but still God calls men to this amazing, amazing sacrament of holy orders. I'm a little disappointed. You started off saying, it's a little it's not remarkable. I was hoping you were going to say, well, one time I got a locution and I just knew I had to be a priest. I've never heard that before. I wish I could hear that one time, at least in my life. That would be really cool. But tell us more about your vocation story.
Well, you mentioned that you were hoping I might say that Pope Leo was the priest I spoke to in Peru. Now, I didn't even realize what I was saying, that, yes, he spent so much time in Peru, but amazingly enough, just to get an idea of our Holy Father, I mean, he worked in Chiclayo, Peru, which, despite that I'd been to 2 mission trips in Peru, they were always very close to the Lima area, and he was nowhere near there. I mean, Chiclayo is way further in the north, and I've only learned about it since he's been elected, just to say he really went there, I think, not expecting to be known by anyone in the world. He ended up becoming the head of the Augustinians. He became the Bishop of Chiclayo. He became head of the Peruvian Bishops' Conference, and then the head of the Dicastery for Bishops. And 2 years later, it's the 287th Pope in the Church. So he truly did not seek this office. But if anyone does happen to live in the Philadelphia area, I'm not sure if this station reaches Philadelphia or if any listeners on the app, YouTube or Rumble, would be in Philadelphia. Actually, the priest who spoke to me is a member of an apostolate, which has recently changed structure, so I'm not sure if it's actually under the same name anymore, but he's Father Carlos Keen, K-E-E-N, and has been the chaplain to the UPenn and Drexel Catholic Centers for some time. Now, if he's still there, he at least was chaplain for a long time, as he was moved out of the formation house of his group in Peru to take that apostolate. I last saw him physically, I think around 2016, 2017 in Boston when he was visiting somebody up here. So I'm not sure if he's still down there, but he's at that church near the train station, St. James. So if anybody had reason to take a train out of Philly and pop by Mass at St. James Church there, and there was a priest he's actually from Spain, I believe, originally, even though I met him in Peru. If he was kind of a Spanish-looking fellow, very white, bearded, a little red in that beard too, I think. And that's him. So if somebody can play this for him, if you know him, Father Carlos, I still think fondly of the day you challenged myself and 3 other men to discern the priesthood. I was the one with the vocation, so I was the one that panicked the most after that. But a couple of my good adult leaders helped calm me down that night. I got to stay up past curfew and chat out vocation and call and everything with one of them. I think one of the guys may have actually worked for this radio station network at a time, but I'll have to ask off air, as I don't want to be throwing his name around and be wrong about that. But eventually, I did go to college just because I thought I should. Everyone was doing it, and I didn't think college seminary was right for me. So I went and got a job dropped in my lap at a school I say it dropped in my lap because I didn't try that hard. I was in the business school, but I was really thinking a lot about the faith during those years, and I just wanted to graduate because I thought that's what you're supposed to do. So I didn't exactly burn the midnight oil with my classes, and started worrying more about getting a job later. And the fact that I did end up with a job at a big bank in New York City seemed like almost a sign from the Lord that he was opening these doors as a reward for thinking mostly about the faith during my time in college, and getting kicked in the butt by my Catholic brothers who put me back on track when I got off track. I just got to go out and visit one of those friends in Chicago for the baptism of his first child a couple of months ago now at this point. So still keep in touch with those brothers. And New York City was very involved in a lot of the Catholic groups there and had a great time. Again, I had my job, but a lot of my attention was focused on these young adult apostolates and in the city. And eventually I did realize, what am I doing? You know, I'm an ecclesiastical figure. That's what I'm going for. And I started to discern actively again. And it just seemed so confirmed, really blessed by the Lord once I started to, think about the priesthood again, reached out to vocation directors, took the application, started filling it out. Then all of a sudden people started coming up to me and asking me if I was a seminarian or suggesting that I go to the seminary. And I knew that the Lord was prompting them to say these things only after I was really open to it again. So, yeah, from that 1 year before I entered till I waited for the next formation cycle to now, it's probably been about 9 years, almost 9 years. And I know this is the life for me. It was confirmed at the diaconate when I put my nose on the marble and then made my promises. Discernment's over. That's how I knew. So, yeah, thank you, Katarina, for the super chat, and everyone else who's sending in their donations and prayer requests. We'll pray for those.
For sure. Well, God shook you up enough that you almost levitated. So you could say that I almost levitated because, and God is so very good. He does open as long as you're open to his grace and you're cooperating with his grace, the doors really open up despite what you think is going to happen, or, you might have a little turn here and there, but God really is faithful to us. But
right. And I know somebody wrote in and
go for it.
And somebody said that I've been up in Nashua at St. Stanislaus. Well, that's exactly how I got involved on this show, because another contributor, Father Brancich, coaxed me into it, and I kicked the can down the road for a while and eventually responded. But look at this, as nervous as I was about signing myself up for this, I now have all these these prayer warriors kind of praying for me and my apostolate here. So I've definitely received more than I've given on this show.
For sure. Wow. Well, we're happy to have you. And this show is very, very happy and thankful for all of the priests who contribute to the show to answer all of your questions. We are raising funds in this hour, and unfortunately we're out of time to ask more questions, but let me give you the spiel here. We are looking to raise funds this hour for our Catholic apostolate. We're in many different cities all over the East Coast. We're also a global media network. We are on all these different platforms where we stream to, and a lot of people find the Station of the Cross Catholic Media Network's content, and they find it to be very edifying for souls. We know this because we hear it all the time. And so I'm just going to invite you now at the end of the show here. If you love Ask a Priest Live, if you love Ask a Catholic Take in the morning, if you like Father Mateig's show, if you love Mother Miriam, if you love, all the different pieces of content that we have here at the Station of the Cross Catholic Media Network, please do call in your pledge. The phone number is 1-877-711-8500. 1-877-711-8500, and we still have the matching gift hour going on, so whatever you decide to donate is going to be doubled in this hour. And you can also go to thestationofthecross.com, make your donations there, safe and secure, as well as the iCatholic mobile radio app. And we're going to call it good night today, but we'll be back tomorrow to answer more of your questions here on Ask a Priest Live.